What is going on, guys and gals? Brooklyn Bound the Raid Scientist here, and today we're going to break down the best exotic weapon catalysts for PvP. We previously put out a video covering my recommendations for the best exotic weapon catalysts for PvE, and now we're branching into the Crucible to find those catalysts that will drastically improve each weapon's function and usability. Keep in mind, today's video is going to cover the catalysts that are the best suited towards improving performance of guns in PvP, not necessarily which exotic weapon overall is the best for PvP. We do have some time until the final shape releases in June, and what better time to finish off those catalysts you've either not obtained or haven't finished. There are some really good ones that are definitely helpful in the Crucible, and I'll break down how to get them and why you should target them. Also, like I did in my last video, after we break down the catalysts, I'll give a few tips of faster ways to finish them off so you can get into the Crucible sooner to test them out, and a tip on getting those catalysts to drop overall if you've been grinding for a while and haven't seen a new one. And as always, if you enjoyed today's video, I ask you to at least consider subscribing to the channel, because breaking things down to the details you need to know is what we do best. Alright, so starting off, the first exotic catalyst I think is amazing for PvP is for the Huckleberry. With kind of a funky history and name, the Huckleberry doesn't always get a lot of attention, but it's great in PvP, especially in a world where SMGs are very strong with their good lethality at decent range. Huckleberry is strong because the perk improves the rate of fire as you hold down the trigger, and it comes with rampage and ricochet rounds. The exotic perk also helps reload some of the ammo automatically upon getting a kill. However, the catalyst makes it so upon a kill, the entire magazine is auto-reloaded. This can be extremely strong in PvP, as you can reduce or remove reloads as you take out your opponents, and can be extremely handy if you are still engaged in combat after taking someone out where you'd normally have to reload. You can immediately continue combat, and because of rampage and the rate of fire increase from the perk, you can be very lethal as you continue shooting. The catalyst drops or comes from completing any playlist activity such as strikes, gambit, and crucible matches, and requires you get 500 kills with the Huckleberry after you unlock it to complete it. Next up on the list is Thorn. This catalyst released in Season of the Wish and is totally targeted towards making Thorn more powerful in the Crucible. Recall, Thorn is a 140 RPM kinetic hand cannon that leaves remnants behind on kills that you can go pick up to improve your damage over time over a short time. Where Thorn struggles, especially as an exotic, is that compared to many legendary 140 hand cannons and other exotic 140s, it kicks very hard and is pretty mid in terms of range. However, the catalyst fixes both of these issues by improving the range and stability, originally by 20 and 10 respectively, but was later adjusted to plus 15 range and plus 5 stability, which is still extremely strong to address Thorn's weaker stats in that area. The catalyst also gives it a small bump to its airborne effectiveness. This catalyst drastically improves the damage falloff for the weapon and also improves the effectiveness in the air. If that's not enough to get you excited, the catalyst also gives the weapon even more improved range and mobility and handling for a short duration after you pick up a remnant. So once you get a kill and grab a remnant, you'll have bonus damage over time from the weapon itself and more range and mobility and handling from the catalyst. Overall, this is an S tier catalyst for PvP, and once again it comes from playlist activities like Gambit, Crucible, or Strikes. It could take a fair number of these, so keep it up until you finally get it to drop. Next up on my list of exotic weapon catalysts that shine in PvP is for Dead Man's Tale, the exotic scout rifle. Now, the weapon itself only comes from the Presage exotic mission, which is a rotator every 3 weeks. It's now craftable versus when it was originally released, which allows you to customize the perks and barrels you want, so it's definitely worth doing. You'll need the Beyond Light expansion also to be able to run this mission. This weapon shines in the Crucible still, even after it's been hit with a few nerfs. It's a hip-firing machine, allowing you to be very lethal at long range. The catalyst comes from completing the Presage mission on higher difficulty, which also adds a timer to it, and makes some pretty hefty enemies, so you'll want to bring a team or use that fire team finder. The catalyst gives it a perk called Dark Forge Trigger, which removes the accuracy penalty when you're firing from the hip and increases the rate of fire. So as you stack Cranial Spike from getting multiple precision hits, you'll also increase your rate of fire and target acquisition even more. This catalyst allows Dead Man's Tale to consistently be hip-fired with no accuracy penalty and menacingly just stand back and pick off players from pretty far away. Especially if you play on mouse and keyboard, this can be extremely powerful. Next on the list of amazing PvP catalysts is the catalyst for a pair of hand cannons, Crimson and Sunshot. I'm looping two catalysts into one category here, which is kind of cheating, but it's really pick your preference. Hand cannons still reign supreme in the Crucible, and they probably always will. They are too effective at both close and mid-ranges, and have a ton of forgiveness in the air, making them popular choices. And in most of Destiny 2's Crucible maps, aside from maybe half a dozen, hand cannon ranges are pretty much all you need. Both of these catalysts increase the range. While simple in nature, this allows the damage fall-off distance to improve. Crimson's catalyst gives it plus 18 range, and is probably my preference between the two for PvP. Crimson gives you healing and partially reloads your magazine on kills, and is really very strong without the catalyst, to be honest. But adding 18 range gives it a total of 92 range and is absolutely worth it. It fires in 3 bursts at about a 140 RPM rate, although it's classified as a 415 because of the triple burst. The catalyst can drop from any PvE kill, so it's likely you probably already have this unlocked unless you're a newer player. Running strikes is a good way to farm for it, because strike completions can also award other catalysts as well. Sunshot is also a very strong catalyst because not only does it give Sunshot 27 range, but it also improves the stability by 18. Sunshot is classified as the only 150 RPM hand cannon and kicks a little harder, so this improved stability is very beneficial. It also drops from any playlist activity completion, strikes, gambit, or crucible matches. And it's kind of a grind to finish because it requires both regular kills and the explosive kills. So places with high enemy density are very good to complete this. So because this video is aimed at PvP focused catalysts, I'd say between the two they're both amazing. I'd lean towards Crimson if you prefer the healing and a little extra forgiveness with headshots since it fires in 3 bursts, and lean towards Sunshot if you tend to be a little bit more accurate with your shots and prefer the explosive perks. Sunshot will likely shine a little brighter in 6v6 where you tend to have groups of players capturing zones and running together, where the explosions can be more impactful. Either way, pick up these catalysts and finish them off for a strong boost to range in PvP for 2 very good hand cannons. Next up is the catalyst for Vex Mythoclast. I was on the fence about this one because recent changes bringing Vex Mythoclast from a 390 RPM weapon down to a 360 RPM weapon has definitely had an impact in the Crucible. Vex Mythoclast got some insane PvE buffs this season, giving it 200% damage to champions, increased damage to miners, and so on, but none of these affect its performance in the Crucible. Vex consistently has been a strong option in the Crucible because its exotic perk, allowing it to fire as an auto rifle essentially, can be lethal at much longer ranges than a fusion rifle normally would be. But the purpose of this video is to highlight catalysts that make great improvements to the weapon for PvP purposes, and Vex Catalyst does this. The catalyst, unfortunately, is going to require some time and raiding to achieve because the weapon itself comes from the Vault of Glass raid from Atheon, and the catalyst comes from repeating the raid, doing some special puzzles. So while definitely not easy to achieve, the catalyst completely transforms the gun in PvP. The catalyst gives it a 20% damage buff upon getting a kill, and improves stability and accuracy for a short duration as well, when it's in the full auto firing mode. The base range on this weapon is 85, so it's already pretty strong in the Crucible, but having increased damage after a kill gives it this rampage style effect that makes chaining more kills in a row a lot easier. Now, before we get to our last catalyst on the list, I want to shout out a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut, as all these catalysts have some pretty good upside in PvP. Risk Runner has a catalyst that adds about 27 range to it, and being a strong SMG to begin with makes it a laser in the Crucible. Cloud Strike's catalyst is also very strong in PvE, giving the weapon triple tap, but the catalyst also gives it more handling, which is very nice in the Crucible. The Duality Shotgun catalyst gives it more range, making it lethal from both firing at the hip and aiming down sights from over 12 meters, and Sturm is another exotic hand cannon that has a catalyst that gives it more range and handling. Ultimately though, The last catalyst on my list is for the auto rifle SOS Regime. The base weapon itself recently got buffed because 600 RPM auto rifles got a base increase, which allows them a lot more forgiveness in the Crucible. Recall that SOS itself has the ability to choose the RPM with the exotic perk, and with spinning up, it starts at 600 RPM and increases as you hold down the trigger. Now, one downfall from SOS is that the SOS legacy trait that provides a chance to return health on its kills seems very low chance. During a match, you might only get it to activate once or twice, depending on how many final blows you actually get with SOS Regime. However, the catalyst improves the chance drastically. It makes it very strong in gunfights where you might be low health from engagement, and then after the kill, the health regen can save you from another player flanking you. I don't have the exact numbers of the percentages, but I'd say it makes it over 30 or 40% of the time to trigger the health regen, and it's very noticeable. In addition, the catalyst also improves the stability recoil direction of the weapon to make it almost completely vertical, which makes the weapon a lot more predictable. Overall, this weapon has seen a lot more action in the Crucible because the improvements to the 600 RPM damage and the catalyst really makes a big impact. Now, the catalyst is going to be a bit of a grind to both achieve and finish. It drops from kills in the Crucible, so unfortunately there's nothing you can do other than playing PvP until it drops to speed it up. In addition, once you've found it, you'll also need to unlock a whopping 300 kills with SOS Regime in the Crucible. So ultimately, if you aren't a consistent PvP player on a regular basis, then you're probably going to have to put in some real effort into this one. Alright, so remember that getting some of these random catalysts to drop, whether they come from playlist activities or kills, can be a challenge. When the Thorn catalyst came out this season, I heard some people saying it took them over 20 or 30 strikes to get it, and some it took 5. The drop rates are pretty low. One thing I've found that might help, and the community swears by as well, is to finish off some uncompleted catalysts if you have a lot. Bungie has never spoken or confirmed on this, but it seems like if you have a lot of uncompleted catalysts in progress, then the drop rate on newer ones is lower. And if you go finish off a few that you've been sitting on, the game rewards you with a new catalyst seemingly more frequently. Now, as I said in my last video, take this with a grain of salt. There's no data to confirm this, but it's a tip to try if you've been grinding for a few days with no luck. Also, if you're newer to grinding catalysts or looking for some ways to get more kills faster, here are some places to do it. Firstly, if you're needing PvP kills, momentum control is definitely your friend, as primaries are much more lethal. And while you will also die faster to other people's primaries as well, you can sneak off a handful of kills with your primary more reliably versus traditional modes where more ability and grenade spam is prevalent. For PvE kills, there are 3 pretty popular options. First, doing the entrance to the Grasp of Avarice dungeon and just farming the Thrall and Acolytes as they come out of the cave over and over and over. Secondly, you can load up the Last Wish raid and go to the Shirochi checkpoint via the Wishing Wall, and reset the beginning of the encounter over and over, killing all of the enemies and then wiping. This method nets you a rally flag for heavy and special ammo as well. And thirdly, in the Lightfall campaign missions, there's a mission called Breakneck, where if you reach a point inside, you can get a rally flag, and a ton of Vex will spawn, followed by a big yellow bar Wyvern. If you don't kill the Wyvern and then wipe, you can reset and kill all the enemies again, and keep repeating very easily. Alright, everyone, that's all we have for today. My votes for the best exotic weapon catalyst for PvP purposes. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful, and thanks for watching. Until next time.